What does it take for a simple farm boy from the rugged hills of Sinaloa, Mexico, to transform into one of the most powerful, feared, and notorious drug lords in modern history? In the case of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, it was a volatile combination of ambition, cunning, and a willingness to engage in brutal violence. From the very moment he stepped into the shadowy underworld of narcotics trafficking, Guzmán demonstrated an uncanny ability to navigate treacherous alliances and outmaneuver every adversary in his path. Over the course of decades, he would dominate an industry soaked in blood and danger, orchestrating multi-billion-dollar smuggling operations that would reshape the global drug trade. But how did it all begin? And what drove him to become the face of the infamous Sinaloa Cartel? Buckle up as we dive into one of the most dramatic rises and falls in the criminal underworld. In this video, we'll explore El Chapo's life from his impoverished upbringing in rural Mexico to his ascension as the boss of bosses. We will dissect the events that propelled him from the dusty backroads of his village into the crosshairs of international law enforcement, culminating in multiple arrests, infamous prison escapes, and eventually his permanent downfall. Through this journey, you'll witness how an unassuming teenager found early mentorship under some of Mexico's most legendary traffickers, forged global supply routes through cunning deals, and orchestrated monstrous acts of violence to secure his hold on power. By the end, you'll understand the magnitude of El Chapo's empire and the staggering effort it took to finally bring him down. Without further ado, let's take a deep dive into the life and legacy of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán. Joaquín Archibaldo Guzmán Lora was born on April 4, 1957, or possibly December 25, 1954, according to some accounts, in the small rural community of La Tuna, situated in the municipality of Badiraguato, Sinaloa. This region is notorious for being part of the Golden Triangle, a mountainous area where the borders of Sinaloa, Durango, and Chihuahua meet. The rugged terrain is famously known for cultivating lucrative drug crops such as opium poppies and marijuana. El Chapo's family, like many in that part of Mexico, struggled with poverty. Their livelihood depended largely on subsistence farming, and the environment was harsh. From a young age, Guzmán was introduced to the backbreaking labor of the countryside. Legend has it that he got the nickname El Chapo, meaning shorty in Mexican Spanish, because of his short stature, reportedly standing around 5 feet 6 inches, though it was also common for people in his region to earn nicknames based on physical traits. Raised in a family plagued by financial hardship, El Chapo was no stranger to adversity. He attended school only sporadically, if at all, as there were too many mouths to feed at home and too little time for formal education. Some accounts even suggest that his father was abusive or absent, contributing to a tough childhood that forced Guzmán to rely on his own resourcefulness. In these remote areas of Sinaloa, the line between survival and lawlessness often blurred. Many young men turned to cultivating marijuana and poppies as a means to make ends meet, a practice that had been embedded in the region's culture for generations. Guzmán was no exception. By his teens, he was reportedly helping with the cultivation of illicit crops, quickly gaining first-hand knowledge of the drug trade's fundamentals and of the dangers that accompanied it. However, growing a few fields of marijuana in the hills of Sinaloa was just the beginning. In the 1970s and 1980s, the Mexican drug trafficking scene was undergoing a transformation. The older generation of traffickers like Pedro Aviles Perez began forging alliances with emerging kingpins who recognized that the United States offered a profitable market for narcotics, especially after the demise of established Colombian cartels. Guzmán's big break would come when he secured a spot working under Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo, also known as El Padrino, the godfather of the Guadalajara cartel. Under Felix Gallardo's mentorship, he learned the logistics of large-scale drug trafficking, forging relationships with suppliers, coordinating shipments, and managing bribes to key officials. He also earned a reputation for ruthless efficiency. Trafficking operations under his watch ran punctually, and if someone broke his rules, retribution was swift. This combination of discipline, cunning, and brutality was precisely what helped catapult Joaquín Guzmán from small-time operator to a rising player in the cartel hierarchy. The late 1980s marked a seismic shift in the Mexican cartel landscape. When the Guadalajara cartel fractured after the arrest of Miguel Ángel Felix Gallardo, multiple factions vied for dominance. Among them were the Tijuana cartel, the Juarez cartel, and what would eventually emerge as the Sinaloa cartel. Guzmán, alongside Héctor El Güero Palma and other associates, took control of valuable corridors in the Pacific region. Sinaloa's strategic position along the coastline and its mountainous interior allowed Guzmán's organization to transport massive quantities of cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamine, and heroin into the United States. Throughout the 1990s, El Chapo proved adept at exploiting law enforcement's blind spots, establishing sophisticated smuggling tunnels underneath the United States and Mexico border. These tunnels became his signature, allowing for the clandestine and efficient movement of narcotics. It wasn't just tunneling ingenuity that gave Guzmán an edge. He understood the importance of forging alliances far beyond Mexico's borders. He reached out to Colombian suppliers who were looking for reliable routes to the United States. By positioning the Sinaloa Cartel as a trustworthy bridge between Andean coca fields and American street markets, Guzmán ensured a steady flow of product and income. With the collapse of major Colombian cartels like Medellin and Cali, the Mexican organizations became the new gatekeepers of the U.S. drug market. This power vacuum gave El Chapo the opportunity to negotiate from a position of strength, extracting favorable terms and profits that would skyrocket the cartel's earnings. But with power came conflicts, particularly with the Tijuana cartel run by the Arellano Felix brothers, who had been co-heirs to Felix Gallardo's empire. A bloody turf war erupted, leading to countless assassinations, bombings, and shootouts. By the mid-1990s, Joaquín Guzmán was already a name feared by adversaries and revered by allies. Yet, his notoriety also put him squarely in the crosshairs of Mexican and American authorities. In 1993, he was arrested in Guatemala and extradited to Mexico, where he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Many believe that would be the end of his reign. However, El Chapo's influence only grew behind bars. He allegedly continued to orchestrate cartel operations from within a maximum security facility, using bribery and intimidation to keep prison staff under his control. In 2001, he pulled off his first legendary escape, reportedly hidden in a laundry cart, an incident that underscored just how extensive his reach was. The entire episode highlighted the corruption pervasive in Mexico's prison system. Once back on the outside, he set about rebuilding and expanding the Sinaloa cartel's operations with even greater determination, swiftly eliminating threats and outmaneuvering rival organizations to become the unrivaled boss of the Sinaloa Cartel. After his escape in 2001, Guzmán solidified his network, employing state-of-the-art technology, brutal enforcement tactics, and large-scale bribery campaigns to protect his interests. He capitalized on political turmoil and law enforcement inefficiencies to expand the Sinaloa Cartel's sphere of influence throughout Mexico. Simultaneously, he diversified operations, venturing into methamphetamine production on an industrial scale. By forging partnerships in Asia for precursor chemicals, El Chapo ensured the cartel had a lucrative product pipeline from the Far East straight into the North American market. Throughout this period, cities like Culiacán, Tijuana, and Juarez became battlegrounds for cartel supremacy, resulting in tens of thousands of homicides tied to the drug war. Ordinary civilians were often caught in the crossfire, and atrocities such as mass graves and public executions became grim reminders of the cartel's tactics. Meanwhile, U.S. authorities, in conjunction with Mexican Marines and federal police, ramped up operations to capture Guzmán. In 2014, they finally succeeded in apprehending him at a condo in Mazatlan, Sinaloa, following a month-long manhunt that included dramatic raids and intelligence breakthroughs. This capture was hailed as a major victory for both Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto's administration and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. However, victory celebrations would prove premature. In July 2015, El Chapo pulled off one of the most audacious prison breaks in history. Guards at the Altiplano maximum security prison discovered a nearly mile-long tunnel leading from the shower area of his cell to a house under construction, complete with ventilation, lighting, and a motorcycle on rails to ferry him out swiftly. The meticulousness of this tunnel only emphasized Guzmán's engineering ingenuity and the extensive corruption that allowed such a project to flourish undetected. The audacity of his second escape turned El Chapo into a global media sensation. While the Mexican government scrambled to contain the fallout, Guzmán went into hiding. Yet, it seemed the drug lord couldn't resist the limelight. A clandestine meeting he arranged with actors and journalists inadvertently exposed his whereabouts. In January 2016, less than 6 months after his spectacular prison break, Mexican Marines recaptured him in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, following a bloody raid. This time, the Mexican government swiftly extradited him to the United States, determined to prevent another embarrassing escape. In the U.S., Guzmán faced a litany of charges ranging from drug trafficking and money laundering to murder conspiracies. His 2019 trial in New York was a spectacle that exposed the inner workings of the Sinaloa Cartel. Jaw-dropping tales of corruption, violence, and lavish spending emerged. Ultimately, El Chapo was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years, effectively ending his reign as the most infamous drug lord on the planet. And so, the story of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán has come full circle, from a poor farm boy in the remote hills of Sinaloa to the most wanted drug kingpin in the world, and finally to a solitary cell in the United States. His journey laid bare the systemic corruption, powerful alliances, and staggering brutality that fueled the international drug trade. As the head of the Sinaloa Cartel, El Chapo's empire brought in billions of dollars and unleashed violence on a massive scale, turning him into a folk legend in some circles and a hated criminal in others. At the end of the day, however, Guzmán's downfall serves as a cautionary tale of how ambition, desperation, and violence can intersect to shape a life and a legacy that shakes entire nations. The echoes of his story still reverberate across Mexico and the U.S., highlighting the ongoing challenges in the war on drugs, cross-border crime, and political corruption. Whether viewed as a modern-day Robin Hood or the embodiment of evil, El Chapo remains a potent symbol of how far someone will go to claim power in a world awash in narcotics money. Thank you for watching, and be sure to stay tuned for more gripping true crime stories.